welcome to another episode of Gossip Finance. I'm your host, Alacia Singer.
And I'm Duncan Sandlin. Welcome, everybody. Hey, Lace, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. We got a fun day today. We got a bunch of news stuff, and then we're going to go through some clips for fun. So,
all right. I was going to say there's kind of a lot going on. So, what do you want to start with in the news?
Well, kind of wanted to start with this story. So, Marjorie Taylor Greene and all of her, all of her glory. She got reamed for something about her stupid workout video, or we're not going to get into that today. But she talked about, she went on Fox News and she thought, this is her thought, is there should be a national divorce. So we should separate all the red states from all the blue states. Right? Now, despite how stupid this was, of course, this becomes an interesting topic on the news, especially if you're in economics or finance, because you're sitting there going, what would that look like? Right? But
I don't think she would be as happy with the result as she thinks she would be from a financial standpoint.
Nope, not at all.
Economically, that'd be a mess for her.
Well, anyway, so it went further, and then she kind of doubled down on it. So here's a clip of her, real quick, and kind of her statements, in case you don't believe me. I stole this from the Young Turks. So
we've seen people fleeing those leftist policies and moving to states like Florida, Georgia, Texas, states where they like the tax policies.
Well, let me clarify this. The reason that's kind of slowed down people leaving New York and California, especially. But part of the reason there was a lot of people that moved out of those states was because the cost, right? Because to live in those big cities, the rents went way, way up, right?
Sure.
So not so much that they didn't like living there. It was just they could afford to live, in Texas where everybody's broke and their money goes a lot further. Same reason people retire.
Sure, it was based on their wallets more so than their preferences. Perhaps a few preferences as well, but there was a huge personal finance reason for that.
Yeah.
They like the schools. They like the consequences of Republican and red policies. What I think would be something that some red states could propose is, well, okay, if Democrat voters choose to flee these blue states where they cannot tolerate the living conditions, they don't want their children taught these horrible things, and they really change their mind on the types of policies that they support, well, once they move to a red state, guess what? Maybe you don't get to vote for 5 years. You can live there, you can work there, but...
So there we go.
Oh, so let's just suppress the vote.
But only Democrats. Not Republicans. Only Democrats that move to red states.
You did not make this stuff up. Does she not have people who work for her that tell her do not go on and say dumb crap like that?
Could you imagine anybody who's smart enough to say, don't say that, working for her? Would you want that on your resume? I mean, no, if you're if you're a Republican in that situation, no, you're like applying for Mitt Romney, or you're applying for, Ron Johnson. Not even Ron Johnson is an idiot, but I mean, you're applying for somebody who's at least intelligent. Mitch McConnell. You're not, you're not going to get stuck with that shit. Well, anyway, so that's funny because it's horrible voter suppression stuff, but anyway, it got funny because this circled through the media, through the corporate media news cycle, right? And
I'm sure they had a heyday with this.
Oh my gosh. And so they were talking about this a lot, but here's Morning Joe. This is MSNBC, but Joe Scarborough, this is his show. He's a Republican. He's a registered Republican. Not my personal favorite, but they actually brought on an economic advisor to talk about what that would look like. Hypothetically, right? And so this is what they got.
Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia made headlines earlier this week calling for Republican states effectively to secede from the Union. The Georgia Republican posted her proposal on Twitter, writing the U.S. should be separated by red and blue states because of, quote, woke culture issues. Morning Joe economic analyst Steve Ratner here with charts that show why a national
in the background, woke culture issues, and they're like, oh, fucking God. Shouldn't we be covering the train derailment in Ohio? God damn it.
Oh my goodness gracious.
All right. So anyways, So now we have a serious economist. Look at him. He's got the suit. He's got the pocket square. I can't even do that fold. That's amazing. Here we go. He's going to do it. He's going to lay it down.
Course, would not work out so well for those deep red states. Steve, good morning. What do you have for us?
Good morning. Well, first of all, Marjorie Taylor Greene is not alone. There have been a number of polls. There was one in 2021 that 2/3 of Southern Republicans wanted to secede from the rest of the country. And it's not going to work out well because when you take a look at how the balance of spending versus taxes goes across the country, what you can see here is that on the left side of the states carried by Joe Biden, the green are states in which the state paid more to Washington in taxes than it got back in other benefits. The orange colors, and they're shaded depending on the degree of disparity, are the states where the states got back more from Washington than they sent. And you can see on the left, a lot of green on the Biden states, 9 states altogether, as a matter of fact. And on the right, the Trump states, virtually every single state except for Utah, don't ask me why Utah, got back more from Washington than it paid. And so it would not really work very well to their advantage to leave. In fact, the top states for getting a better deal from Washington are Kentucky, Mississippi, and West Virginia.
Yeah, and if you look at poverty rates as well, Steve, higher poverty rates correlate by and large with some of these red states.
Yeah, so you can say, well, why is this happening? And poverty rates plays the major role. And first, let's look at what the poverty rates are. The chart on the left graphs the amount.
Look at this. This is ridiculous. Okay. So counties Trump won. They broke this down by counties in this one because it doesn't work by state. If they break it down by county, there are, let me get down with this and we'll get back to this graph in a second. So there are 3,000 something counties in the United States, right? And that's how this really breaks down, because like if we're saying like a state like Michigan, right, which tends to be a red state, right? But a lot of their money comes from the Detroit area, which is all blue, and those counties, right? Or states like, Georgia used to be a red state, now it's a blue state, but Georgia, like Atlanta is where all the money is, right? It's like I live in Oregon. If you break down Oregon by counties, Oregon looks like a red state. It looks like there's just the blue is all on the coast, right? But the reason is because in the Portland area, that's where everybody lives. So the 4+ million people in Oregon, like over 3.5 of us live right around Portland. The rest of the state is pretty freaking barren. I mean, you have counties where there's like 10 people in Oregon, and that's the whole county. I mean, it's ridiculous. So what they're going to show here is Biden won 509 of the counties, and Trump won 2,547 counties. Okay, but the counties he won were all very, very low population for the most part. A lot of them were. And they were also the poorest, least educated counties with the lowest life expectancy, worst health outcomes. So it's interesting that Republicans always sort of matches that kind of category where they tend to be poor or less educated, right? Which is what they're showing here. And so what they're showing here in this chart, which is great, is here on the left, it's the poverty rate versus the Republican voter share. And as you can see, the higher the poverty rate, the more you're likely to be a Republican, right? And the GDP share. So of the people that voted, the counties that voted for Biden, they make up 71% of the United States gross domestic product. Those 500 counties, 509 counties. The other 2,547 counties that Trump won only make up 29%, less than a third. So what they're basically saying is, if there was a secession or we split up like that, and let's say that was possible, the Republican counties would basically lose everything. They'd be totally broke. Because the other thing he brought up before, and I did this, if you add up all the blue states, I just did this by states. The blue states, if you factor in all they pay in tax versus all they receive in federal benefits for things like welfare, security net, safety net kind of stuff, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like WIC and all that. So a lot of those are federal benefits that get funneled down through the states. Well, if you factor in how much the blue states paid in total in tax versus what they received, the blue states pay 1.4, and this is from 2019. They paid about $1.4 billion more in tax than they received in benefits, federal benefits. Right?
So you could basically say, in super simple terms, the blue states are essentially giving those various entitlements and funding for social programs to the red states.
Right.
So basically, the blue states are literally funding them for the red states.
For the most part. Then the other side of that coin is, if you look at the red states in full total in 2019, the red states versus what they paid in tax versus what they took in social benefits, the stuff they rail against. We hate Social Security. We hate all the benefits. We hate, all these programs. They just want to give. The Democrats, the red states took in $540.5 billion. Over $500 billion in 2019 in welfare. More than the blues, or over what they paid in taxes. So the blue states are pretty much self-funding, is the point. The red states, on the other hand, have to have the federal government and the blue states to be self-funding in order to fund them, because they're not self-funding. They'd be running massive deficits every year if they were independent. So it's one of those things where it's like they complain, but it's like, dude, without the liberals paying for you, you guys would be flat on your ass. I mean, this is literally like, that your deadbeat cousin staying with you and saying, "Fuck you, I want to watch Fox News," and we say, "No, pay rent then," and he says, "Well, I'm leaving. I'm seceding from this house, man." And we're like, "Okay, what are you gonna do? You're unemployed. Where are you gonna go?"
Okay. Well, it might save me money.
It would definitely save us money. Anyway, I just thought that was a funny one, because it's like they like to stir the pot with this, and it's like you haven't thought this through at all, because it's not a bluff.
Right. It's like, I'm going to take my ball and I'm not going to play with you anymore. When you're talking to people that have a whole bag full of balls.
Right. It's like, well, you don't even have a ball.
You can take your one ball, and I've got a whole bag full of them. So, I mean, all right.
Yeah.
Go for it.
So that was interesting. So, in other news, this one was fascinating. So, they're doing studies here in the U.S. and a couple other places, but they just finished one up in England on a 4-day work week.
Love that.
Let's see if it works. So what they did was they got all these companies to try the 4-day work week. They did not reduce pay at all. You still got paid what you'd normally get paid for a 5-day work week, but you just worked 4.
So if you make $50,000 a year now,
you still make 50.
40 hours a week, 5 days a week. You still make 50, but you're working 4 days a week, and you have a 3-day weekend basically always.
Right. So now you went from, you're still making 50, but you're working 32 hours a week, 4 days, from 4 days, right?
That's great.
Yeah. So the question was, does this lower productivity? Does this cause a problem? What they found was no, productivity did not go down. In a lot of cases, it went up. So let's see what the businesses thought.
What?
Yeah.
I'm not even surprised. I mean, I'm like the mindset person here, and think about it. Happier people get more done. They're a little bit more, I hate to use the word on top of it, but when you're happy, you're operating a little quicker, your mind is a little sharper, you're a little more excited, you might have a better attitude about things, right? As opposed to, feeling like you're going to be somewhere for all this time anyway, and so, like, what difference does it make if this gets done today or tomorrow or whatever,
Right. Well, we can talk about that in a second, but let's watch, because this is I forget what this, I stole this. This was News Nation, sorry. So they're going to talk about this real quick, but yeah.
midst of a 4-day work week, almost every company taking part is going to keep it. Kelsey, you got more on this. It's kind of making workers happy, isn't it?
Well, guys, it's Wednesday. It's hump day. We've got 2 more days left. Am I right?
After this.
What if
I can't
all of
even
that
fathom.
changed?
I can't even fathom that a 4-day work week would work.
But here's the thing. This morning, 92% of those companies we were learning that tested the 4-day work week, that were part of that test, they say that they're keeping it.
Ooh, wow. So I stole that one from the Young Turks, but 92% of the test companies said, yeah, we'll just keep doing this. It's working. And like you said, people are more productive. They don't slack off as much because they're not as
When
stressed
I'm
out.
happier and when I feel like I have more ownership over more of my time,
Absolutely.
the change in my attitude is amazing. And I'm not a very negative person necessarily in general, but I definitely go from, yeah, okay, I got to get this done and that done and whatever, to being a little bit more like happy to be there because I know that I'm going to have all this other time that I have custody of to do other things with. As it stands right now, I know a lot of people who work full time basically feel like on the weekend they get 2 days, one of which is devoted almost completely to setting themselves up to be able to work the next week, and 1 day remaining to try to make choices about just personally.
Well,
You know?
right. Plus, you got to figure this. I was thinking about like when I went into business for myself. That was the main reason is I wanted to control my time. I knew I was going to make less money for quite a while, but it was But at the same time, it's like if I want to blow off the afternoon and go golf or whatever, not a big deal. If I need to schedule a dentist appointment, right? I mean, that was a pain in the ass when you're working Monday through Friday. You got to take a day off. You got to clear it with as opposed to, hey, I have, I can just schedule it, right?
And listen, I've had bosses that have, kind of given me a hard time about what time I scheduled an appointment for.
Right.
And then you're trying as hard to get the appointment as early in the morning or as close to the end of the day as possible. Right. But everyone else and their brother's trying to get that appointment too. It's not even an option necessarily. And then you have to go in and be like, oh, I have to leave so I can not die, so I can do something for my health, or so my teeth won't fall out of my head.
Right.
And you've got someone kind of giving you, really, you can make it at a different time.
Well, and we'll get into this in the next in a little bit here with Dave Ramsey. They talk about what's going on with the job market, but part of that too, and I'll circle back, is if you have kids, think about what a 4-day work week is. That is a huge deal if you have kids.
And a money saver if you have children that require care. They can't just go from school to home. They're too young. They need to be in the daycare or something. If you can eliminate an entire day a week that they have to go there, that's not insignificant.
In one of these studies, they were talking about, they talked to a couple, and the husband his office was part of the study, and the wife's office was part of the study, and they had 2 kids, right? And so they're paying for daycare 5 days a week. But what they did was they straddled it. So she would get Mondays off and he'd get Friday off. So Monday she'd take care of the kids. Friday he would take care of the kids. So now their daycare went to Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Wow.
So they shaved 16 hours plus of daycare off their cost, which saved them. Yeah.
Got more time with their children, and I would argue probably more quality time with each other because, if they straddled it that way, they could choose to do a lot of the erranding separate on the days they weren't both off, on the Monday or the Friday, and really enjoyed their Saturday and Sunday together more.
Well, right. And that was the thing is like, okay, Dad would get the kids Friday, and then he'd just do the laundry and take the kids out and then make dinner. So wife gets home, doesn't have to worry about any of that. Laundry's done. Mm-hmm. I mean, that could take a whole, that takes up half a weekend day sometimes, especially if you got 4 people you're doing laundry for. I mean, you think about that, that's just a huge, and now all of a sudden their quality of life just shot up right through the roof.
Mhm.
Plus, you got to look at it from the employer perspective too, which I always tend to do as somebody who's employed people. Is I would be thrilled by this, because if I'm offering a 4-day work week and nobody else really is, what do you think my employee retention is going to be? It's going to be through the roof.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no. Why would you leave? You're going to leave and go
You're
work
not gonna
5 days a
spend
week?
more money. You're not going to spend more money training employees. People just really stop to consider how much it costs to hire, train, onboard new employees.
Yeah.
That is not an insignificant expense either. And so if you're retaining more of them, and let's think about it, every time you have to hire new employees, you probably have to hire them in at higher rates than what the raises would have been you would have been paying to the old employees. Not that I
Right.
agree with that necessarily, but that does happen. And not only do you have to keep retraining people, which costs money, you keep having to alter,
Right. Especially when you're competing against other employers, especially like in a job
Right.
market like this where you're having to compete for employees.
Right.
Yeah. So I think it's just a phenomenal idea. I think they should have covered it better. TYT did a decent job, but that's basically what it was. So yeah, that was the 4-day work week. I'm all for it. Win, win, win.
Me too. I think every full-time worker deserves to have a little bit more custody of their own time.
Yeah. Well, plus it's just better all around for everybody. So now we want to get into the student loan stuff. So whenever you're watching this is the Supreme Court just heard arguments today. From what I've read so far, not looking real good. But we're going to look at the cases because the cases are kind of bogus. So we're going to have a guy explain them here. I have Sam Cedar on the Majority Report, and who's this guy with him?
Connected as opposed to concurrent.
Sorry. And sorry about that, everybody. So who's with him? Mark Joseph Stern. And Mark Joseph Stern is he's a legal analyst, but he looked at these cases, and this is a little old, but it's basically what the cases are that just went to the Supreme Court today. So they're going to talk about this for a second, and then we're gonna go over what it is. So Mr. Stern and Mr. Cedar are going to cover this for us right now. Dump some wisdom on us, gentlemen.
Current with, so that you could argue that was the auspices in which this loan forgiveness happened under the HEROES Act.
Let me take a second to clarify that. That was my mistake. So Biden's justification was, back in 2003, they did what's called the HEROES Act. And this was during the Iraq War. And the idea was it was an emergency act where the Department of Education could put off payments for student loans and things like that, especially for soldiers, right, who are overseas, right, so they wouldn't be accruing interest and all that. So the idea behind the HEROES Act as well, we're technically in a state of national emergency where this is going to economically affect this group of people, soldiers in the case, right? So Biden's saying, well, technically with COVID, we're in an economic, disaster, national emergency, right? So that qualifies under the HEROES Act. So the Department of Education, under the HEROES Act, should have the right to say, we're going to do this loan forgiveness, right? Because if they don't, a lot of these loans have been, postponed. When they come due, a lot of people aren't going to be able to pay them. And so you're going to see a shit ton of defaults over the next couple of years, which is going to damage the economy. If people are defaulting on their loans and you're having to go after their stuff, right, their homes and things like that, it's going to be very devastating. So they're saying, no, it's a national emergency. Under the HEROES Act, we need to get these forgiveness done so these people don't get into a horrible financial situation. So that's the argument that Biden's making. He's going to give you the argument that the Republican legislatures in the states are making. Mr. Stern is here on the left.
What made this susceptible to these challenges, or was it something else?
these judges were always going to find a way, I think, to block this law. I mean, I think you can, or this program, and you can see that because they're concocting these ridiculous theories of standing. And you laid out one, like Missouri has this student loan processor that has the name Missouri, or the word Missouri in its name. It's called like the Missouri something something. It's not a part of the state. It's not a state agency, but the state of Missouri somehow persuaded the Eighth Circuit that it is, and got this preliminary injunction against the program. And I think it's worth noting, this injunction, it was 5 pages long. The number of sentences devoted to analyzing whether this program is actually legal, 0. The Eighth Circuit devoted 0 sentences to analyzing whether student loan debt relief is lawful. Instead, it spent 5 pages explaining how this was such a big deal that it had no choice but to put it on hold indefinitely. That is not a court that will care exactly which statute the Biden administration uses to justify student loan relief. That is a Republican court that is hungry to halt this program by any means necessary, and will not even bother to justify its decisions on the basis of law because it has the power to step in and do whatever the hell it wants.
Okay, so he makes a great argument there. So, did you have a comment there? Okay, so
No.
well, you should know a bit about this as a teacher, because
I really do.
yeah, you do. Mohela is what he's talking about, is the Missouri loan. So a lot of you guys who have student loans, it's through a company called Navient, but Navient is a private company that the government runs the loans through. However, there is a federal company that it runs loans through, and that's how it does most of its loan forgiveness for civil servants and other people. And Lacey would know.
Yeah, so we all just got gifted to Mohela.
Mm-hmm.
When you first go to start certifying your employment to get them to count it toward your forgiveness, your loans suddenly vanish away from whoever had them and get sent to somebody not of your choice. It used to be Fed Loan Servicing and Fed Loan Servicing, and they pulled out of it, and it became Mohela. So in the middle of all of this, with payment pauses and trying to hurry up and get in the applications for the temporary public student loan forgiveness program, etc., they started moving all of our loans over to Mohela.
Mm-hmm.
And ironically, civil servants don't get a choice about this. Like, if you're enrolled in the forgiveness program,
right,
you're just given to this particular company.
Right.
So they're not exactly in a bad position, are they?
No.
They get your loans whether you want them to have them or not.
Right. So here's the deal, though. So Mohela does a lot of this where they do the forgiveness on the student loan. Now, when the loans transfer over, like you're applying for forgiveness, and I don't know, Lacey's situation is probably different because she's been a public servant for a long time. But if you go back and forth for Mohela, this is really great, because if you're a private person that has to go over to Mohela from, say, Navient, like me, and I'm applying for, let's say, forgiveness for, let's say I end up working for a nonprofit for 10 years and I apply for loan forgiveness. So I have to transfer everything from Navient to Mohela. Mohela is going to charge me like 10 or 15% on the total amount of what I owe just to transfer it. Right? So for me, it's scary because if I don't get the forgiveness, now I owe all that much more money if it gets denied for whatever reason. But now under the Biden administration, a lot of those are just being granted. So you'll have people that like, okay, I owe $27,000, right? And now I qualify for the total loan forgiveness as a public servant or a nonprofit, right? So I'm transferring my 27 over to Mohela. Well, now all of a sudden Mohela is going to charge me. So now it's $33,000 that I owe. But I'm crossing my fingers that it gets forgiven. So Mohela, when it gets forgiven, just made $6,000 for basically moving money from one account to another and then getting a check from the government to pay it off. So you got to think of it from Mohela's perspective. If they're doing this, they could make, if they're starting to do loan forgiveness, Mohela could make billions on some of these forgiveness programs. So MOHELA, even though it's Missouri, whatever, Missouri Office of whatever it is, whatever the name is, it's not attached to the state of Missouri at all. And in fact, it does everything directly with the federal government. So the lawsuit in the state of Missouri is, well, no, MOHELA is attached to us, so we're suing because Missouri is going to lose money. Well, Missouri is not going to lose any money, right? Because MOHELA is not attached to them. And MOHELA isn't suing at all. They're not even at the Supreme Court. They have no representation because they're not a part of this at all. As a separate entity. So there isn't any real standing here, but it doesn't really seem to matter if the Republican judges or the conservative judges just want to say, well, but does Biden really have the right? We're going to skip the fact that you don't even have a right to be here to testify in this case. We're just going to skip to the fucking point. And that was his whole thing, is if they just want to dump it, they're just going to dump it. Not because they have a good reason. Now, here's the second big one that we'll go through real quick that he's talking about. And this one I think is from Texas. So he's going to go through this real quick.
In Texas, the judge used the major questions doctrine, which you've talked about on this program. It is a made-up whole cloth in only existence in the past 9 years, and there's no definition of what constitutes major in the major questions doctrine. It really just seems to be like, well, when we think something's like important, then it is.
This is going right back to law versus policy. The major questions doctrine is a policy veto over laws that conservative judges don't like. They don't like the Clean Air Act. Major questions doctrine, shoot it down. They don't like student debt relief. Major questions doctrine, shoot it down. Elena Kagan called it a get out of text free card, and I think that's exactly right. I don't really understand how any one person can decide what is major or not. I had thought that the court simply had to say whether Congress passed this law and allowed this regulation or not. But we're in this new era thanks to the Supreme Court's decision over the summer in West Virginia versus EPA that gives these conservative judges a new tool to just do whatever the hell they want. And that.
Okay, so let's. I don't want to get too in depth with that. So the major questions doctrine is this. So the Texas thing, it's two guys in Texas, right? Basically suing because they're just suing under the Republicans, but they're suing saying, well, I don't want the student loans, or I think it's unfair, right? But both of these guys, it's hard to say that because you have to show injury in a lawsuit. You have to show loss of some type. The problem is if they win, they won't get the student debt, so they'll lose money. If they lose, they'll get the student debt, and they'll get. So it's kind of. So basically, they're not showing loss. They're showing, I just don't want this gain. That's basically their lawsuit. It's insane. And so what happened in Texas was the court just said, well, we're going to use this thing called the major questions doctrine. All right. It's not a law. There's nothing legal about it. What it's basically saying is the judge is saying, well, it's above my head, so I'm going to kick it up to the next court. Right? I, as a circuit court judge in Texas, cannot be asked to adjudicate as a judge. How am I capable to judge such matters? This needs to go up to the Supreme Court. That's basically what it is. And he's right. It's a get out of jail free card. It's a get out of doing your job. Right? Man.
You just can't make this stuff up, can you?
No. So it's all kind of horseshit. So everybody knows that going into the Supreme Court. So the argument right now, the question right now is this: John Roberts will probably go with it because he's a very corporatist kind of guy, right? However, the question is, does Brett Kavanaugh and Coney Barrett go with this? Because there really isn't any standing to start with. and they're already in, their whole reputations are in the total trash, and their humiliations with their friends because of the whole Roe v. Wade thing. So the question is do they step up and say something? Because Scalia is going to say yes, and Thomas is going to say yes, and Gorsuch is going to say, yeah, let's dump this whole thing. The question is what are Barrett and Kavanaugh going to do? So I think that's what really it's going to come down to. But the standing issue, there really isn't much to go with. But if they want to just skip past it, they can. So we'll see. I mean, I wouldn't get your hopes up, boys and girls, but it's it's all kind of a quagmire of horse shit right now. I mean,
it's kind of a shit show over there. Kind of a shit show.
Well, if you had,
Kate,
go ahead.
I know this is mixing news stories, but if the red states seceded, we could just give them the Supreme Court and we could just start a new one.
Well, it'd be interesting because the Mohela case is the 8th Supreme Court, and they are extremely conservative. I think you're in the 3rd? I don't know, the 2nd or the 3rd district or circuit. Yeah, I'm in the 9th circuit, and so the 9th circuit is a little bit more reasonable for the most part. I mean, it's the nice thing about living on the West Coast is it's kind of like I know what's going to happen. There's not a whole lot of mystery. Something goes to the 9th circuit, everybody's like, yeah, we kind of already know what they're gonna. It's not going to be a toss-up, right? But when you have such a political divide, it's like that's the problem. The Supreme Court lost. I mean, it's always been sort of a political tool, but it's lost all legitimacy. If they were just about the law, they'd just be adjudicating the law, but they're not anymore. I mean, and I think Dobbs, where they basically threw out Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade wasn't even argued in Dobbs. It wasn't even brought up. They just added that to the decision. And then they leaked the decision prior to the final decision, basically to rein in Kavanaugh and Barrett. I mean, so the whole thing was corrupt. And now how many hundreds of thousands of women are suffering because they can't get medical care for their pregnancies. So, I mean, I don't know. It basically just nail in the coffin for the Supreme Court for me. They could go either way.
And are they naive enough to really think the whole back alley abortion thing isn't going to make a huge comeback and women aren't just going to start dying again? I mean,
well, there's
what was happening before.
Well, there is some of that. Mostly the big problem they're going to have is for the anti-abortion people, the anti-choice people, it's going to be there are so many drugs that are abortifacients that are so much better now than when Roe v. Wade was passed, in the 60s, 70s? Right. How are you going to stop that? Women are going to be able to get pills over, from anywhere. I mean, you guys couldn't. The drug war. You guys couldn't stop coke. You're going to stop fucking. So anyway, side note on abortion, not a financial thing. We could do a financial thing on abortion and just what it costs to have a children and all that. But anyway, we'll move in the next thing. Do you mind if we take a quick break and then come right back?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope, that works for me.
We're back. So now let's do clip stuff. Clip stuff is fun. Oh, I do want to. You might like this. We can cut this out later if you want. But I did get a really great insult from a commenter. This was. Okay. I can't even be mad because it was so good. So it's
like where you're kind of like, I wish this was about somebody that wasn't me because I hate that it's about me, but I kind of love what.
And I'm like, dude, it's so fun. So he was like telling me, he's like, okay, he asked if I was like the love child of Robert Zadar, and I was like, who the hell is Robert Zadar? And I
Oh,
looked it
that
up.
is.
Yeah, he was an actor in the 80s, and he was in a horror film called Maniac Cop. And yeah, and he has he has a really big face, but it's actually kind of funny. So here he is. This is Robert Zadar. And I was kind of like, oh, that's so good. I kind of can't even get upset. Look, just
That's so good.
let them side by side.
If you grew your hair out a little bit.
I'm like, I can kind of see it. I'm like, yep. I'm like, yeah, he's got me. That was good. That was a good one.
I kind of love that.
Isn't that hilarious?
I think, yeah, I love that.
Oh man. So,
All right, way to go, guy. Way to go.
hey, kudos, man. You win. You win that round.
Yeah, you know, I mean, we don't have that kind of a cage match, but I'll give him the win for
Yeah,
that.
that's a total win on his part.
Total win.
So anyway, I remember when I was young and people would compare me to Keanu Reeves, but now, now that I'm old,
This is what stress and bad habits will do to you.
yeah.
folks.
So take care of yourself, children. You end up looking like Robert Zadar. All right, so we're gonna go to a clip.
Oh, that's so good.
So we got
Right.
Megyn Kelly on her show. I have no idea where she's broadcasting anymore. She's got Dave Ramsey on, so he's got to be thrilled because he just got over a year or two ago getting sued by the one employee he fired because she was gay, the other employee he fired because she got pregnant. The whole thing with Chris Hogan, all this stuff. What was the other guy? Anthony O'Neill left under kind of odd circumstances.
But they seem to be theoretically on good terms, or at least that's what they publicize.
Yeah. But but they're dumping minorities and loose women over there.
I mean,
but anyway, so
I don't know. I wouldn't want to stick around there.
yeah. Anyway, so now he's on Megyn Kelly's new show. I think it's titled "Justifying Low Ratings with Megyn Kelly," because her career is tanked. So anyway, they're going to talk about the job market in America and what the state of the job market is. And it's gonna be kind of. I don't know why you'd bring Dave Ramsey on and not an economist. Why are we bringing on a guy who has no background in any of this? So anyway, but that's what she did.
Unemployment rate. Let's talk about that because it is at a historic low, 3.4%. It was at 3.5%, I think, under President Trump, and then COVID. And so he was definitely taking a victory lap on that. You're welcome. Historically low unemployment rate. Is it true? Does he get credit for the unemployment rate and for at least helping to create a climate in which it could be so low?
Well, again, Washington takes credit for things, both sides of the aisle do it all the time, that they're not responsible for. And so what we've got is, number one, we have a problem with how we measure unemployment. The unemployment rate as we measure it today is the statistical processes from the 1930s. And it's missing so many elements now, so it creates a false picture. So, yes, we have full employment, no question about it. Actually, we have a labor shortage that's very dramatic right now. But what is that from? Well, it's from the labor pool having an existential...
So let's break some of that down real quick. So unemployment, hang on. Come on, baby. There we go. So the unemployment number, I don't entirely disagree. It's a little outdated.
I'm gonna say I loosely at least agree with the sort of beginning part about this measurement is really misleading based on how they calculate it. Yeah.
Right, but it's people that are looking for work that can't find work. That's essentially what it is. And yeah, initially it was done in the 30s. It's been revamped a bunch of times, so it's not like it hasn't been updated. The other question is people that aren't looking for work is an issue, but they count that the Commerce. We'll get into this article with the Commerce Department, U.S. Commerce. When they count unemployment, they count people not looking for work too. They could be working.
So there's also an element worth addressing too that I don't know that gets addressed very well is people that are what you would call underemployed.
Right.
Now,
Which is the other.
That's a huge problem, but they don't appear unemployed, so they kind of get a little bit lost within the data there, but they may not have sufficient employment.
Right, but we can talk about some of the reasons for that when we get into the I have an article from the Commerce Department we'll go through real quick.
Right.
But it kind of undercuts a lot of what this is because they're going to turn it into it's a political thing that, oh, well, we gave these people too much money and then they got lazy and they're scared of COVID and they don't want to go back to work. And they're missing a huge element that we'll get into here in a minute. But I love that. It's like, I don't like the unemployment number, but he can't tell you what's wrong with it. And he never does because he doesn't know. He read an article somewhere and he agrees with it. That's how this is the whole thing that's crazy about it. At least I'm telling you, I'm getting this from an article from the Commerce Department because I'm not an economist that would know how to judge this. He's pretending he does, which is what kills me. But I think he's just thrilled to be back on the news shows after all the scandals he was in.
Crisis during COVID, during a quarantine, it says, not only they might just shut my job down at any moment, and people might comply to that. Not only that, but on top of that, I might die. And I never thought about dying before. And so now I'm going to go do work that I want to do. I'm not going back.
See, Lacey, nobody ever thought about dying before COVID. Never occurred.
Okay, I see your point, but you know what? I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna say I see his point because
you're a lot more sensitive to it, sure, but
some of the people that were dying were people that were in obviously poor health, but there's plenty of things that you heard about people dying that you're like, whoa, wait a minute. That person didn't seem to have too much going on health-wise, and they seem to be at the age that maybe is close to my age, and so there's some validity there.
Well, but here's the other thing he's missing about that is he's saying people are quitting their jobs because they're thinking about dying. What he's not saying is, because during COVID, during this whole period of COVID, over 1 million people have died, and a lot of them were workers. So that's a huge chunk out of the workforce. Hundreds of thousands of people that could be working, but they died from COVID. So he's missing that factor too. And if, like you said, if your coworkers are dying, are you going to sit there and go, well, I'm going to stay and work because I really, really want to work? No, you're going to sit there and go, fuck that shit. I'm out. Right? That's why so many people didn't, dodge the draft for Vietnam. It's like, do I really want to go die for this pointless war?
Back to a job or a boss I hate. So we've had the great resignation and the great movement. We've got a great work from home movement that has exploded.
But he's not explaining. This is what I hate, is he's not going to explain any of this. The why. Dave, why?
And employers have complied to. But also, the thing that nobody's talking about in the mix of this is, and Mike Rowe, my buddy's been Dirty Jobs, has been covering this a bunch, and several other people have picked up on the research that's out there on it. We currently have about 6 million unfilled jobs, and that the unemployment statistics, the way we do them now, doesn't cover the fact that for the first time in American history, we have 7 million able-bodied males between 25 and 54 that are not looking for work. So they're sitting on the couch playing video games for whatever reason, and someone else is supporting them, whether it's the government, their girlfriend, their mother, but someone else is supporting.
So we're going to stop him there because we've covered this because this is the only stat he has, right? And we've covered this because he's covered it on his show so many times. 7 million guys not working, right? And he's like, well, for whatever reason, we know what the reason is. Most of them have high school education or less. and they can't get jobs that are worth anything. And so they've just given up. And this is not a new phenomenon. This has been going on for 20 years that number has been growing. And where do you find most of these guys? Well, as we discussed earlier, you'd find them in the red states, in the red counties, where there aren't great jobs, where the education sucks, where they can't get a lot of benefits, where they're just sucking on government benefits. And most of them are conservatives like Dave and Megan. But they can't take credit for it. But that's the whole thing is, well, that's the problem. Well, if we could just fix that. But what they want to do is spin it. And this is kind of what he's doing is, well, they're just lazy, probably because they're liberals. So we're not going to mention, we're just going to let the audience assume that they know. Even though that's not what's actually happening. But let's actually look at what's happening because this is, like I said, I don't know why you'd bring that guy on your show to talk about this. I'd have brought in, if I had her. Go ahead.
You would bring him on there because you would be looking to choose somebody whose opinion is going to go with yours.
Right.
Who is used to stating their opinion in a manner that sounds like fact.
Yeah. But he didn't give you anything, really.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
But
go ahead.
Unfortunately, people have grown extremely accustomed to published opinion being treated as factual evidence when really it's just another opinion. So it kind of feeds into another problem. You can bring somebody like him on there and dress it up like facts.
Yeah. Well, just tell me what I want to hear, man. Don't tell me the truth. Lie to me, baby. So this is the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. They just did a big study on the labor shortage, right? And as you go through this, it's like, okay, so let's see what they did. So right now, the latest data shows that we have over 10 million job openings. So his 6 million is way the fuck off. But we only have 5.7 million unemployed workers. They're counting just about everybody that can work, right? But then they do this thing where they're talking about here. Even if everybody was working, we would still have about 4 million open jobs. So we're missing people. We just don't have the population. Is a big issue. And then they talk about labor force participation. Let me go down to this graph. So look at this. So January 2020, at the bottom of this graph, if it'll get bigger. Yeah, there we go. So January 2020, right? Boom. You see the orange is unemployed workers, COVID spike, right? So it shoots up to, almost 23 million, over 23 million. And now it's shot way back down to 5.7, right? But job openings, even before COVID, were really low. Now they're much, much higher. There's a greater demand. And you just don't have the personnel there to do it. Right? So what does that tell you at the end of the day? It tells you, we've got a bigger issue. Let's see. So when you're talking about that, I think he's missing the point here, which is COVID was a big devastating event that kind of changed how everything worked. But at the same time, we've been in a position now for many, many years where we just don't have enough people in this country. And population growth has slowed in this country quite a bit.
Yeah, people can't afford to have kids.
Right. But these guys are also anti-immigration, so they can't sit there and say, well, the reality is if we had 4 million people from South America come in tomorrow, we could fill a lot of almost all these jobs, and our economy would be fucking rocking. So let's go back. Let's see. So here are the good ones. So factors contributing. Increase in savings. This was actually a good one. So collectively, because of some of the stimulus checks, but people were staying at home more and they weren't going out, so they weren't spending as much money. So they collectively, during lockdown, Americans collectively added $4 trillion to their savings accounts. So these people have savings to live on now. They don't have to go back to work necessarily, a lot of these people. Right?
Right.
I think that's interesting. I like this. 23% of women cited others in the family making enough money that working full time is not as critical. Right? Plus, because now the higher income and savings bolstered economic stability. So now, I don't have to go to work. I can stay home with the kids. Right? This was a big one for like me. Early retirements. I had probably 35% of my clients retired early because of COVID. That was a rough time because I'm working from home trying to figure out how to do everything remote. And I've got these people on the phone every day going, get me out now. Get me my money, get me out now. I'm not working anymore. File for my pension, file for my Social Security. We're going now. Right? And and of course, as their financial planner, it's like you're looking at it going, yeah, this is probably the good move. I'd rather you get out now than get sick. Right? I'd rather you be at home. You can watch The Price is Right with, was it, who's hosting The Price is Right now? Is it Drew Carey?
Yeah, Drew Carey.
Yeah, but that was a big one for me, man. People just, let's just bail. I'm just getting out. And, I was all for it. But, side note, I heard the rumor about The Price is Right. The big wheel they spin. $1. That's filled with the blood of contestants that lost.
You heard it here first, folks.
No, that's an actual rumor that's been going around for a long time.
Oh, man.
I'm an ex-cop, kids. I've spent a lot of time in court, so I've spent a lot of time watching The Price is Right.
I mean, at Jeopardy, right?
No, mostly The Price is Right was on right before court. It was the time frame.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. The Price is Right. A lot of Maury Povich. Waiting to testify in court. So early retirement was a big one. This was another one I thought was interesting. I hadn't thought of that much, but lack of access to childcare, because a lot of childcare facilities shut down. So a lot of people just stayed home.
Right.
Because they had to take care of their children. Let's see, was it 3.5 million mothers left their jobs down here? Driving the labor force partition rate for working moms from around 70 to 55%. It's getting back now that they can get some childcare, but that's something we should have focused more on, I think, to recover the economy. Something to help with childcare, those costs. I was kind of shocked when we cut not shocked, I mean, Kristen Sinema and Manchin and the Republicans, when they cut the child tax care credit. When people were getting $300 a month per kid, and I'm like, it's freaking nothing on the budget, man. These people will all be back at work right now paying taxes. You take a ton of pressure off these people, but nope. And then a lot of younger people starting new businesses, which I'm all for. Plus, a lot of people, when they talk about the Great Reshuffle, it's part of the Great Resignation. People are going, I don't like my job, I'm going to try something else. Because they're already in the shit because of COVID, so why not try a new job? So there are a lot of things, and it's interesting to me, because it's like, here you're on Megyn Kelly or Dave Ramsey, you're finally getting back on the network news after all your little scandals and lawsuits, and you got tagged by the religious news and all that stuff, right? The Christian news. And here's a great thing. He had that question prepped. He could have got on there and he could have said, yeah, let's talk about all this stuff. And he could have spun it from whatever angle he wanted, but at least he'd have some arguments or something. But instead, it's just, well, the men aren't working and da-da-da, and that's what it is. And that's it? So basically, I have no answers. I've just, it's basically life sucks, get a helmet was his whole fucking answer.
Right.
kind of just bums me out, man. But since we're talking about the genius of Dave Ramsey and his crew, I have got a couple clips for you. We'll try and do one right now, and then we'll see if we have time here. But let's do this one first, because you are gonna crap your pants. This one is so good. It's so good. I have to do ASMR because it's so good. So, George Skippy Camel versus a TikToker. Now, what is the TikToker talking about? She's talking about, should you pay your house off early or save and invest your money? Have we ever done that before? Have we ever run that scenario before? Yeah, we've done it a bunch of times. Yeah, so this girl's going to do on a TikTok what usually takes us 15 minutes. She's going to do it in about 2, making us look really stupid. But what we're really looking at here is, how does George combat this? Because I've never seen them combat this. So we're gonna dive right in. Are you ready to rock and ruin?
I'm excited to see the TikTok video.
Oh, you're gonna see it. Oh, we'll play it all.
And so we found a video about mortgages, and we get a lot of hate for our take on mortgages that you shouldn't.
Hang on, let me slow him down a little bit because I forget he's not as slow as Dave.
Yeah, because he sounds super caffeinated when you speed him up.
Yeah.
And it's a hot take that you should pay your mortgage off because then you can really live and give like no one else and build wealth. So let's watch this video, and I'll let you know my thoughts after.
Paying off your mortgage early isn't always a great idea. Let me show you why. Let's say that you have a $300,000 mortgage at a 4% interest rate for 30 years. Your payment is $1,400. You have an extra $1,000 that you can use to either pay off your mortgage faster or invest. Let's look at what happens in both cases. If you use your $1,000 to pay off your mortgage faster, you'll pay off your mortgage in 13 years and save $120K worth of interest. Now start investing all of that $2,400. 17 years later, you'll have $1 million, assuming an average 8% return. Now let's look at if you invest the $1,000 instead of paying off your mortgage. Over the same 30 years, you'll pay $128,000 more in interest, but you'll have $1.4 million in investments. Paying off your mortgage early would cost you $300,000 in total wealth. That's a lot of money. Sure.
So,
look at the look on his face.
I know he's struggling, man. I'll bring it back. Oh, you'll make more money. The other thing she's not bringing up, but we bring up all the time, is it's less risk because you have that in cash, as opposed to all that money is sunk into the house. So if you have a massive emergency, now you're looking at selling your house, or if you had saved it, it'd be. But we've done this every time, and every time, if you invest it at the higher and you get the higher rate of return, you're always going to make more money over the long run. Always.
That being said, each individual has to evaluate what their actual goal is,
right?
Which may or may not align with the, saving it or paying off the house. I can't stand it when this one size fits all thing sort of starts to happen.
Which is what I loved what she started with, which is it may not be the best idea.
Right. She didn't say you should absolutely do this other thing.
She's just saying understand what your options are. So I love it. She does the textbook, like we've done it so many times, the textbook, first year, or not even first year, but college personal finance class. This is a basic freaking question you'd get on that test, right? You approach the client. What do you tell them? These are your these are the options. This is what they look like. I would have also thrown in a hybrid and said, hey, why don't you split it? And you could do it both ways. Pay off the house a little bit quicker and save some money at the same time. Right? But she just said that.
You might go with the behind the door number 3 scenario.
Right. We can play this scenario a bunch of different ways. But she's right. If you save the money and invest it, you're going to make more money over the long run. That's just the fact. And the real fact is it's less risk because you have that in cash. It's easily liquefiable money, as opposed to you put all the money in your house and you don't have that savings and you need the money. You're either having to borrow at high interest right? Take out an equity loan on the house, which puts you back in the same fucking boat you were in before, right? Or you're going to have to sell the house. So her plan is actually the least risk for the best reward. His is the lowest reward at the most risk, the maximum amount of risk. But you can tell he's getting frustrated here. So let's see how he responds. Maybe we're wrong and he knows something we don't, Lace. We're gonna find out, because look at him. He's got his jean jacket. You know, he looks like a sexual predator from the 60s. He's gonna go.
I'm trying to do that face.
The smush face. Let's see. Oh, you're just so smart. All right, let's see how he does it. All right, Skippy.
Sure, you've saved a bit on interest, but you lost money in the long run. That's why it's so important that you understand the way personal finance actually works. That way you can crunch the numbers and choose the path that makes the most financial sense for you.
Oh, so that's how personal finance.
Oh.
So this is the part where he jumps in and says, "Oh no, one size fits every single person. You shouldn't actually get to make a choice."
Well, that's how personal finance works. Oh, I didn't know. He doesn't know, apparently. He's taking it personal. It's not like she's talking to him. But that's how he's taking it. He's very upset. He's getting upset. Calm down, Skippy. It's going to be okay. All right, Skippy, what are you going to do? Come on, calm down.
Actually works.
Oh.
Oh my goodness. Well, if I had known that, I would have gotten to way more debt, because apparently.
Well, you don't know that because you have no education in personal finance. So
you can make millions by going into debt and staying in debt.
She didn't say that. So already, boom, right out of the gate.
He's starting by making assumptions that she's trying to tell them to do something that she was not at all trying to tell them to do.
So he's feigning offense, like, no, I'm really the expert. Oh, well, you're just, I'm really, And then he's going to straw man the argument. She's saying stay in debt forever. No, in both scenarios, she pays off the house. In both scenarios.
Right.
She just goes one quicker, and the other one, she makes more money.
Right.
She didn't say stay in debt forever. She didn't say take out debt to invest. And by the way, for anybody who starts a business, that's part of what you have to do. Is a lot of times you have to take out debt to invest in your business. Nobody started a business on their own without borrowing some money somewhere. Unless they already had the cash for some reason. But that's ridiculous. So anyway.
Okay. A lot of numbers were thrown out there. You can ignore the numbers for now. It's too much to keep.
Ignore the numbers. Personal finance works the way I tell you. So ignore the numbers. Oh, brother. This just keeps getting dumber. Personal finance. Ignore the numbers. We don't care about interest rates. We don't care how much money you put somewhere. We don't care anything about numbers.
Finance has nothing to do with numbers. Ignore the numbers. This is like...
He's making me wish there was something stronger than herbal tea going on in this cup.
Your Honor, I object to this evidence being called at this time. Why is that? Because it's devastating to my case. Overruled.
Okay. Let's go back to the pain.
Oh my god. Well, he can't address the numbers because he'll lose. Because they're fucking. She gave him. They're perfect. I mean, he looks like an ass if he addresses the numbers. So he's got to. Okay, well, let's address something else. Let's change the topic.
I tried to write some of it down. It's just too much.
Oh, he tried to write it. He couldn't handle it. But remember, this is Skippy. He's the numbers guy. Right? He's the numbers guy. He tells us that all the time. He's the guy who's really into numbers. He likes numbers. But we're ignoring the numbers, and he couldn't keep up with the numbers. What a tool.
Here's the deal. as a guy who paid off his house, and some people have said, well, that was a dumb thing to do. You should have invested the money. Listen, it's hard enough for me to sleep at night with everything going on in the world, but I sleep a whole lot better knowing my home is paid for, and I don't owe anyone anything. And here's the thing. People come at us and go, well, you still have taxes and insurance, so you'll always have payments. You must be real fun at parties if that's how you think when you talk to people. So when it comes
Okay, while that comment is a little bit funny, it's like, what are you talking about?
Because he doesn't have anything to talk about. So now he's just scrambling. He's just, because here's the deal. This is what's so fucking hilarious about this. He could have reviewed that video beforehand, run the numbers, developed an argument, and made an argument. Kind of like we do. Right?
Or he could have had one of their, I have no idea how many staff members do that for him and stick it in front of his face to deliver. He wouldn't even have to do anything.
Right. But he didn't do any of that. He's like, oh, I'm just going to watch it, and I'm going to be right. And then what happened? He watched it. He's got nothing. Nothing. Oh, I paid my house off early. Well, because I don't sleep well at night. I'm like, yeah, but that's not because it's a financially smart decision. It's because you have a freaking bug up your butt about debt. That's fine. Then pay off your house early. It still doesn't make it the smart decision. You can do what you want with your money. Nobody's saying don't pay off your house early. She's not saying don't pay off your house early. She's just saying that's not the smart move. Now, if you want to do it, that's fine. It's your money. There's no wrong answer with your money. You know? It's like we joke about my little doll. This is $40 for this thing. Was it necessary? Was it a smart purchase? Yes and no. No, I didn't really need it, but yeah, because I think it's funny. So, but that's the point. It's like, there's no wrong answer. It's my money.
Just understand what your options are and which option gets you which result.
Yeah, because I could have thrown that extra $40 at like my student loans or something. And that would have probably been the smarter move. But no, I wanted the freaking toy. I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong. But the problem is he's doing that, and then it's like, people put it, well, yeah, I mean, even if you pay off your house, you do have taxes and utilities and homeowners and all that other crap, right? So you never really pay it off. And he's like, well, you must be fun at parties. It's like, who's talking about that shit at parties? I work in finance, and people talk to me at parties and ask me financial questions, and I'm a lot like, we're at a party, dude. It's like when we're golfing and people are asking me, what investments do you like? I'm like, I'd like to invest in concentrating on my swing right now. And for you to shut the hell up while I'm doing it.
Right.
I don't talk in your backswing. But geez, God, he is really struggling. Let's give him another minute and see if he can redeem himself. What do you bet he can redeem himself? Nothing?
Oh boy.
Something? All right. That jean jacket's pretty painful.
So the mortgage, you're right. On paper, you can do better. If life works out perfectly for you, and you magically have an extra $1,000 sitting around, which, news alert, most Americans don't because they're broke, then yes, on paper, if it works out perfectly, and you get your exact return every single year, and you get that exact mortgage scenario, sure, you could end up with a few $100,000 more. But the truth is, 99.9% of Americans aren't doing that, will not do that, can't do that. They don't have extra money laying around. And if you think that if I did have extra money, it would all go towards investing because I'm such an astute.
Okay. Well, now he's just debunked their whole thing. Because their whole thing is you throw that extra money at he's like, well, first off, most people don't have that money. It's like, okay. Yeah, but your whole thing is if you have the money, throw it at the house, right?
Right. And that's the scenario she's running. If you have that money, here are your options.
Throw it at the house or throw it in the investment. Right? He's saying, well, most people aren't going to do either. But it's like, well, then why are you telling people to pay off their house early
So,
if you know they're not going to do it?
That might be true, that most people maybe don't have it and won't do it, but that's also not the scenario you're talking about. You're talking about the person who has it and wants to do one of the things.
Well, but here's my point.
And which thing?
But my point is, his point is, even if they have it, they're not going to do it. It's like, okay, well, if they have it, you're saying they're not going to do either. So
you're also saying they're not going to do your option.
Yeah, so your option is just as freaking stupid at that point. Right? On top of that fact, if they do, and that's what they do, he's right. Yeah, you'll have more money. And he's saying, but that's assuming that you get that 8% every year. And he's like, well, wait a minute. You're the guys that tell everybody you can get 12% every year out of the market. All that you consistently tell people that. And she's not talking about 8% per year consistently. She's talking about 8% average over 20 years, which is consistent with the market today. 8% per year is the average return of the S&P 500 index, the GSPC index. She is using standard numbers. And he's saying that 99.99% of you won't even get what we've seen consistently for the last 20 years. I mean, he's got nothing, man.
Let's just add to the mix, and I honestly don't care a lot about this whole interest rate part of this equation. Let's just throw that out there for good measure.
Sure, but
what he had to say about it is also so incredibly stupid, because when they talk about the interest rates you can get, they're always saying 12%.
I just said that, yeah.
She left it more conservative than they do. And he's saying, oh, if you can get this sort of interest rate, if you can get that, right?
But then he said 99% of you won't get that. Right. When they're promising even more than that.
When they say that you can get 12, she's saying
you can get 8, and he's saying 99% of you won't even get that. But we're promising you'll get 12. That was what was so.
In the process of trying to debunk her, he kind of offed himself.
Yeah, he just debunked themselves. We can watch him hang himself some more. I think I'm done with that. But it's like, unless you want to watch some more, because he's got nothing. I mean. But that's the thing, is we've done this scenario over and over again. And that's just the reality of the scenario. Is in most, and we usually only do it for 10 years.
Right.
Just to be reasonable. Right? For her, that was a real, if you're looking at a 30-year mortgage over a 20-year period, right? Yeah, she's actually she's right. She's in a much better position. Right? And she's right. $300,000. Is the main difference over a 20-year period if you're doing it consistently like that. The other thing that he points out, which is like, well, you have to assume that everything goes right. Well, here's the problem. Let's say something goes wrong and you're disabled and you can't work for 6 months. Which I guarantee 1 in 20 Americans every year has to do short-term disability for 3 to 6 months. That is consistent. Insurance companies bank on that. And you don't have the cash saved because you put it all in your house. What are you going to do? In her scenario, you have the cash. In his scenario, you got to take out loans or something else. So once again, his scenario is a lot more risk. And over a 20-year period, the likelihood that you'll be out of work for 3 to 6 months, super high. I've been working the last 20 years. I've been out of work for 6 months before. Because I was ill. And I couldn't work. It happens. I'm sorry, boys and girls, you're not made of steel. You're not the Hulk. So it's better, I say it's better to have the cash and just pay off the house over time. Especially if you're young. Anyway, so there was that. We got one more. You want to do that real quick, and then we'll We'll bail? All right. So one more Ramsey one. Now this one is I think this one's a fun one. So it's another TikTok guy, but he's talking on living on $25 an hour. Right. And they're going to get, and it's going to be Skippy and, what's his name? Ken.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Coleman.
Yeah, Ken Coleman. I think we're some Skippy and
Right, so-
Skippy and Fruity Doop.
Now, let me set this up very briefly, and we're going to pause it a few times. So stay with us. This is a very popular and viral TikTok, and this is a real sentiment. I want you to understand something. We're not about to show you this and destroy and criticize and belittle the sentiment. We will take issue with some things, factually, but understand, and I want to set this up properly. There are millions and millions of Americans, George, who feel the way that this gentleman feels. So take this with a shaker of salt and understand this is why we do what we do here at Ramsey Solutions. Let's roll the video.
If you're making less than $25 an hour right now, you should be terrified. If you are making less than 25, you're going to be very pissed off by the time we get to the end of this video.
All right,
This
pause.
information here is going to scare the...
All right, pause. First of all, okay, what he just said there is not true. You'll be fine if you're making $25 an hour.
We don't go viral on TikTok without some fear mongering, Ken.
Boy,
Well, but they're missing this point. So why does he pick $25 an hour? Because $25 an hour and an average working year is $50,000 a year. Okay. Median income is what, around 52? So half of all Americans are making $52,000 or less. Half. So that's why he picks that number. So he's going to break down a budget, but the bottom line is they're going to miss the point here. They're going to think that, oh yeah, this is all fine, but they're going to miss what the bigger point is. But half of all Americans, and that's all age groups, make 52 or less. That's why he picked 25. But they don't get that because they're not finance people.
Scare the whoop out of you, he said.
You're not going to sleep tonight if you make less than $25 an hour.
Okay, this is absolute nonsense, but a lot of people feel this way. All right, now George will tell you how we can do this later. Let's keep going.
I just spent some time looking at some monthly averages of regular costs of living all across the U.S., average costs. And I put them all in a spreadsheet, did all the math for you so you can see exactly what this big picture is here. So these are just normal expenses that most single consumers have, and this is all...
Okay, so let's look at this real quick. So just basic expenses. So he's got rent, $1,659, that's average rent in the United States. Groceries, $500, electric, water, his vehicle stuff, cell phone, internet, streaming, trash. You notice what he doesn't have in there, Lacey?
No.
Medical. He has no medical. He has
He also doesn't have like credit cards or student loans or anything like that, which is pretty prevalent for most people.
And you know what else he doesn't have? Discretionary money. He has no fun money. This is all just basic survival without medical care or any debt.
Right.
Which is unrealistic for...
So it assumes you have a vehicle payment, either a lease or a loan.
Right.
But no other type of debt. And that's pretty uncommon that's the only debt.
Right. We're talking about the most Spartan budget you can fucking put together.
All of them laid out national average right here. The average cost of an apartment is $1,659 a month. With groceries, you're going to spend $500 on that and go down the list here. But add all that up, you're looking at $3,285 a month just in your cost of living expenses, which means to break even.
Pause.
All right, so $3,285 a month. I want to point this out. If you have $50,000 a year, you're making $25 an hour. After tax, you're making about $39.5, and that leaves you $32.91. So you are barely making it every month. And this is no medical, no debt, no fun, barely, based on what he's doing. But they're going to tell you how you can survive better.
I'll let you step in here, but I pointed this out on my show. We're already a little bit out of whack here when you look at just the average vehicle payment. The average used car payment is just a shade under $700 a month.
insane.
So we're not even working with real numbers here. All right, and then let's just point out that what if you didn't have that car payment? How far would that go?
1,000%. Well, one of the reasons people don't have margin is because they are living with payments, giving all of their hard-earned money to lenders every month, and they think, well, this is the path. This is how I get financial freedom. This is what success looks like. But we teach no debt, pay for things with cash, get reasonable used cars. And so this is a big part of the picture of why there's no margin in this person's budget.
That's right. That's why.
So let me clarify this. So I actually looked this up. So their argument is, well, if we just get rid of the car payment, everything will be fine. That's kind of where they're going. So they're a little wrong. So average new car payment is $717 in the United States. Average used car payment is $525 a month. Okay. I went on to NerdWallet, and they say, okay, if you're doing a reasonable, reliable used car, and you're going to pay for it upfront in cash, you're paying at least $5,000. So that assumes you have $5,000. Well, if we're talking about take-home pay, that's 7 weeks take-home pay just to buy a car and pay it off. So in his assumption, in his budget, he had the car at $400. So he's even undercutting what the average is, which is $525. Okay. Now I went on to Bankrate, and they looked at this. So the average cost to operate a new car in the United States is about $9,666 a year. So that's about $805 a month. That's everything. That's gas, maintenance, tires, payments, insurance, all that stuff, right? So let's say for a used car, it's half that. So that's still $400 a month. Even if you owe nothing on the car, just to operate the car is going to cost you that. But on a used car, it's probably going to cost you more, especially a cheap car, because you're going to have more maintenance problems because it's old.
Right.
So
so it may not be in your monthly payment, but it's still going to be an expense that comes up regularly enough
through the year. So you're still looking at somewhere between $600 to $900 a month just to operate a used car in any given month. And that's license, registration, insurance, parking, all that shit, right? So just getting rid of the car payment doesn't solve a fuck ton here, but we'll see what they do.
This out, America. He's saying you can't make enough. This whole video is you should be making way more than $25 an hour, which, by the way, I'm for that. That's what I spend a lot of my time doing, helping people make really good money. But to say that the man is keeping you down when we don't even have the car payment correctly put in this budget, and people think that that's just something they got to carry around. So,
furthermore, he's not saying the man is keeping you down. He's saying be wary of what you're making and what the costs are.
All right, let's keep rolling.
And just squeeze by paycheck to paycheck, you have to be making $32.85 every 4 weeks. So this is calculated at your monthly income at a 40-hour work week. So it's your hourly rate times 160 hours for 4 weeks.
So we'll skip this point and just get to his.
Is at $25 an hour. It could even get worse than that because chances are you're going to be paying more than 16% in total withholdings.
So there's those two options, Ken. All right, George, that's what I wanted you to weigh in on, because I weighed on this on my show. But this is a false choice. Kill yourself.
Most people lose hope because they back themselves into a corner and decide there's only two choices, Ken. Either kill myself working jobs I hate, or that's it. That's it. This is the only path.
Yeah, so you looked at the spreadsheet. Nothing.
Well, those aren't two choices. Kill myself working a job I hate, or this is the only path. Well, that's one choice, dude. These guys, they are not working with a full deck. I swear to God. It's like playing poker, and the guy's got the cards facing you, and he's got two jokers, the card with the rules on it, and like a 2. And he's like, I'm all in.
Right. And he's like,
I win. Sure you do, buddy. Oh, man. But yeah, I mean, but here's the deal. He's got a good point, which is the median income is just barely enough to survive. And that we're, like I said, we're factoring in a single person without kids, with no medical insurance, who has no social life and doesn't have any fun.
who has no credit card payments, no student loan payments, has an auto payment, but one that is not necessarily in alignment with average numbers. Is in fact
it's actually
below.
cheaper, yeah.
Right, Right, exactly.
But they're
Yeah.
but they're going to tell you no. That's fine. You can succeed on that. You can live on that.
There's no advice in this TikTok about controlling spending.
No. So
what issues do you have?
if you're just listening,
How much less can he spend, right? They're going to tell you, but it just kills me. It's like, yeah, he's already fucking scraping the bottom of the barrel.
not seeing the spreadsheet, but outlined here, the first number is rent at $16.59, which he claims is the average rent in the U.S. I don't buy that. Now, if you're on the coast, you're in some higher cost of living cities, yes. But let me tell you, Ken, if this is based on a single person, let's say a single young guy,
right?
That's kind of who he's talking to in this video. Well, I was not living by myself.
Furthermore, he's not talking to a single young guy. He's talking to half the American public that works. Half the American people make less, $52,000 a year or less. That's half. Not just some single guy in his 20s.
For a nice apartment when I was a single young guy in my entry-level job. I had a roommate. You might have multiple roommates. And so to be paying $16.59 is insane. I would say, well, time to get a roommate that cuts your rent down to $8.25. And it just gave you $800 in margin back in your life. Now let's pay off that car because you're paying $400 a month towards that car payment, or you sell the car. That's an extra $400 back in our life. Now look what happens, Ken. We have an extra $1,200 of margin that we can breathe.
Don't forget the streaming. He's got $37 down for streaming.
Yeah, we
which
can
you
cut
don't
the
have to
subscriptions
have.
down. Yes.
You know?
So there are ways to trim the budget. The question are, what are you willing to do? Because don't tell me you can't. Don't tell me you can't get a roommate. Say you're unwilling
$37
to get a roommate.
for streaming. Okay. So seriously, I don't have very many things that I stream. I literally have one thing that I pay for that I stream.
Mhm.
But really, if you have two platforms that you are streaming and zero cable, you're already going to be at $37. So that's not saying this person has decided to get every subscription to stream,
Well, and
under
even-
the sun. And they have no entertainment budget otherwise. So, like, they have zero entertainment budget and they're not allowed to have two streaming services. Like,
Yeah, I can't watch
on.
Netflix.
it's like, okay, you can't watch Netflix and have Hulu. You only have one because you can't spend more than, your $15.
But that's the point, and that's the point they missed, which I think is so funny, which is the guy makes a simple point, which is, and he doesn't say it, but that's the truth, which is he's talking about half of Americans make that or less than that. And he's saying just to survive on that, you have to live a Spartan budget. You can't have health care. You can't have kids, really. You can hardly afford just to survive. And they're saying, well, but that's fine. See, just get a roommate and everything's going to be okay. And right. What they don't understand is most people aren't in those positions. They're living at a deficit because of that situation, because pay is so shitty and low. And the idea that, oh, well, you can just cut back. It's like, but you're talking about half of Americans. You're talking about, oh, yeah, you're 50, making only $50,000 a year. Just get a roommate. You don't even get to have your own place. Just cut back. Just suffer more. We don't give a shit. The problem is you. It's so scumbaggy. It's so self-entitled, as you've said many, many times before. And commenters keep saying, Lacey's right. It's so self-entitled. But it's that, you're right. It's that.
You have to stop and think, like, maybe it's been a while since that's what you made, but you have to recognize there are many, many people, and as you pointed out, that's like, half of America is making that. And what a sense of, entitled sort of, no offense, but jackass thing to say, to just assume this person get a roommate. This person might be like 45, 50, 55 years old, and you can have a roommate at any age if you want to, and that is a strategy for saving money. I support you wholeheartedly. But you know what? I don't expect somebody who's in that age range to want to get a roommate. Or what if it's not even just a single person? It is, a person with a kid. That adds complications to the get a roommate scenario. Again, not impossible,
right.
But it just assumes a lot to just assume that that's what people are going to really be able to do in the easiest manner.
Yeah.
This TikToker didn't say all these people are 25.
Right. Well, we're talking about two idiots that fell back asswards into their BS jobs where they're not qualified at all to be giving advice on any of this stuff. They have no educational background. They have no experience in these fields. And what are they telling? They're telling half the American workers. They're telling 90 million Americans, just get a roommate, pay off your car.
Hey, I'm all about that. Pay off a car and have that $40
yeah,
a month
but
do something else. Sure,
but it's not going to solve the problem.
But it's pretty short-sighted to look at that and say that is the problem.
No.
The problem is that $50,000 a year is like a scraping by thing, because okay, sure, you get rid of the $400 a month car payment, and you know what? Maybe that means you can actually go out to a movie once in a while, because that's nowhere in the budget. Maybe you can go get your teeth cleaned and pay the copay, because I'm going to cross my fingers and hope you have insurance through your job, you know.
Well, but even then, that's not factored in the budget, because most jobs will make you pay for part of that.
Right, that's what I said, and afford to pay the copay or whatever, you know, your chunk of it is. Yeah, it's crazy to think that 400 wouldn't get absorbed by something else that's perfectly valid, because there were lots of valid things that were not in that budget that, for all intents and purposes, maybe should have been.
Yeah, no, and when really the issue is, and we came back to it, was the worker shortage issue with Dave Ramsey and all that. Problem is it just kind of sucks for half of Americans, and the reality is we can't sit here and solve that problem. We can't sit here and fix it. What we can say is, look, at least know when you're going to the polls and who you're voting for. At least know how you're getting fucked. Right. On top of that fact, I'd say this is, you want to change your situation. It's not as simple as just fucking pay off your car. Go get an education. You're going to have to do something drastic. You're going to have to take a risk. That's the only way that works in this fucking country. It's not as simple as, oh, we'll just get a roommate. Because you'll be stuck. You'll be stuck forever. And like you said, you'll have a fucking dental problem or a medical problem, and then boom, you're on all this credit debt, and you're paying that shit off, and you could barely afford to live. You know, the idea of these people quitting their jobs and trying to unionize, yeah, that's how you do it. I want more money. I deserve more money. You got to get that mentality in your head. I'm worth more. That, I got to tell you, is going to be my argument against all these financial expert guru dipshits. Is you need to get that in your head, that you're worth more. Because you are.
Right.
You fucking are. And that, I think, is going to be my final thought. I'm going to let Lacey take it from here. You got anything else you want to throw?
You know what? I'm just going to leave it with your final thought, because that was pretty good.
Thank you.
I agree with your final thought.
Thank you.
So, if you want to catch me, you can catch me at mysensewithsense.com, where you can find information about free workshops, coaching groups that I'm running.
Mm-hmm.
You can find different articles on both mindset and strategies.
Right.
If you want further information about any of those articles, courses, workshops, you can write into us. In addition, you can write into us if you want to send us any clips of things that you would like us to review. If you maybe want to come on and argue with us, or come on and agree with us, or something like that, we might be able to arrange that sort of thing. Or if there are topics you really want us to tackle that maybe we haven't in a while, you can email us. And where should they do that, Duncan? Yeah,
our email's below. It's at gossipfinance at outlook.com. Gossipfinancead, at outlook.com. You really should check out Sense with Sense. The link is down there too. Lacey's blog. It has a lot of good advice about how to think about your finances in different ways, and she uses the law of attraction, which is actually a really good method for how to start divining your finances and what you really want to accomplish in life. I think it's a good goal-oriented system. But yeah, check us out with all that. Please, email us, keep watching, like and subscribe. And thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks, Lacey. Great work today.